All right, thank you for coming. What's the name of this workshop, by the way?
Season extension.
Season Extension. It's also,
And you're, yeah.
and the second kind of connected to that is called the really early garden. So one of the things I'm going to show you tonight, right over here where all those shovels are and whatnot, is how to get your current garden ready for next spring so you don't run into the old, uh, you want to plant early but you can't because it keeps raining, right? And then the ground's compacted because you did nothing with it last fall. In fact, the plants are still there. The weeds that you didn't weed are still there. And then what happens is you get early summer, you get premature summer, and the ground stiffens up, and you go to Lowe's and you buy 6 tomato plants and 8 peppers, and that's your garden. Uh, Probably not true for all you guys, but that's kind of the pattern because the weather is so um, ornery, unpredictable. So the very first principle in season extension is this: save your seed from last year. These are green beans called provider green beans. They're not really, they could be marketable, but the kind of places that we're selling our green beans at, it would be kind of a step down. So we just decided to pull them all out, there they are, and lay them out, spread them out, and let them sit in the sunshine, hopefully, for the next 5 or 6 days. It's supposed to be sunny for 5 or 6 days in a row. And the principle behind that is that the reason that works, even though they're pulled out of the ground, have lost their connection to the earth, is that there's enough reserve energy in that crown, and some of them have roots on them, and in the stems to actually mature them. So that they actually haven't stopped their metabolism. Then when you leave them out like this and let the sun dry them, once they get so that they rattle, that's when you got to get them out. Because in that stage, if they get rained on for one night or 2 nights, they'll rot. So it's kind of tricky. You got to kind of time it just right. So in this case, we would see these 2 beds right here where the red milk crate is. Those were in there about 6 hours ago, and we had this crew from Xavier High School that pulled them all out. So those beds now are ready to get ready for next spring. That's the point of that workshop, season extension. But technically, season extension means save your seed. Small seed is hard to save, like lettuce, radish, that kind of stuff, because of the vagaries of nature. You've got wind and birds and, big rainstorm and it lodges. The whole thing falls over. It's hard to get the seed. But big seed like this is very easy. And if you go to price this kind of bean seed, 5 pounds of it's about $30 now. So saving these, can you see that? Saving these is a big deal. It's not just a big deal because you save money, but it's a big deal because you're connected to that cycle again. If I grew it, I saved the seed, and you start seeing how by the grace of the good Lord, it begins adapting to this area. It becomes native to this area because every year you're saving the seed. That's the first principle of season extension. So we'll see what happens. Like I say, it's a little bit of a gamble. We're hoping for dry weather. We're hoping these all mature, and if not, it's great compost. And that fact that I got it out of the ground, and I can now till that ground and get it into a cover crop, or as you'll see, spreading manure on it, would not have been possible with all this trash, so to speak. Because you bring your equipment through, and you're just getting tangled up all the time with this stuff. It's because it's woody, woodaceous. Okay, let's move on to the next station. Means growing plants to their mature phase, absolutely mature, by November 10th around here. Because if you've got these kale plants up and they're hardened off and they're really rooted in nicely, this patch, there's 1,500 plants in here, is the beginning of what we're going to do to all these beds over the next couple of years. That is, we're going to turn every one of these beds into a no-till permanent mulched bed. And so that you see that here, like we put these plants in, we grew the transplants on 14th Street in Wheeling, our little greenhouse there. We popped them in, we mulched them, and this mulch has been sitting here for maybe 3 weeks. And it's already broken down enough to the point where we can mulch again. So the question is, will this survive the winter? What do you think?
Sure. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely it will. I mean, it's you're going to see how we really make sure it survives the winter over there, where we've got another maybe 800 plants when we go over there. But this, if our theory is, we're going to just keep mulching this thick, like this today was mulch, for example, and as the mulch breaks down and adds organic matter to the soil, and makes hopefully a medium, a type of soil that is conducive to tons of microbiotic activity. Right now, as you probably know, if you've ever been out here before, this field has been raped literally for 27 years. It was a golf course in the 50s, which meant they put tons of chemicals on it to keep their, monoculture of just grass. And for 27 years after that, continuously, a local farmer, Mr. Mintz, put corn on here for 27 years. And I don't think he even rotated. I don't think he even did a corn legume rotation. So in order, you can't grow corn without using chemicals. If you tried it without chemicals, it'd be about this high. But when you pump it with ammonium nitrate in a solution like that, it gets this high. And that's what happened to this. So the microbiotic, the organic matter content in this is about 8%, which is, it's there, but it's not, it's almost statistically insignificant. So this is season extension. In other words, we're banking on the idea that this heavy mulch like this and continuous mulching of it will give us kale all the way to the end there. That's 250 feet down there, all the way into about July of next year.
Really?
Yeah. That's,
no matter how much snow is on it.
No matter how much snow. And that's because it's got a blanket of mulch on it, which is what we're going to talk about next, over here.
Sorry.
Any questions on this? Understand the principle behind this? Okay, pretty simple. I mean, the only thing you have to worry about with this kind of mulching is in the springtime, it's ideal if your soil heats up. And if you got a slug problem, that can also be a problem. Oh, it's not, I've never seen a big slug problem out here for some reason. Probably because it's chemical soil. They can't live in it. The history of the soil was such that it wiped them out. But anyway, that is an issue. If you the Ruth Stout method, if you're an avid follower of Ruth Stout, slugs are an issue. And soil temperature is an issue. Lots of mulch means cold, damp soil into the spring. You don't start really heating up until the end of April, or I'm sorry, end of May. Then your soil temperature, everything just jumps, So if you've got a small backyard garden, you want to try season extension like this, with just say kale or collards or other crops that you can grow in the wintertime. In the springtime, with a small backyard, you just pull it off. Just take a pitchfork or rake or whatever, pull it off, let the ground heat up, and then put it back on again. Okay, any questions?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm still getting tomatoes, but when my tomatoes finish, and could I start some kale seeds inside and then put kale where my tomato plants were and do this there?
You can, but you better do it soon.
Okay.
Now, you want to get the kale up about like that before you put it out.
Okay.
And harden it off, and then put it in. You might get away with that,
Okay.
depending on the microenvironment of where you're planting it and all that stuff.
Okay.
It's possible. I think last year I did that actually, late. I planted, I'll show you this kale way down here from last year. Okay, we're gonna go right over here. So, as I said, and I didn't mean this in a disparaging way, but most people grow something and they don't do anything to the garden. All fall it sits there looking like they didn't weed it all summer, pretty much. So, it's just a mess, you got all this stuff like this. And what I want to show you is a feature of season extension that gets you really going in the springtime, even if it is wet, because it allows your soil to sun out and air out, so it's dry enough that when you get that little window of opportunity to plant lettuce, spinach, chard, things that actually like cool weather, kale, collard greens, all that stuff, you can do it because you don't have a compacted mess. I mean, technically, this soil is a little bit wet still because we just had all that rain, right? And the test for is it too wet to be in there working? Wow, worms. Amazing. Is if you pick up a clump of soil like this and you squeeze it hard and you cannot break it with your thumb, you should not be in there. You should not be walking on it. You should not, definitely don't be working with a shovel. And it's like absolutely sinful to use a rototiller. Because the rototiller makes the aggregate size homogeneous. So homogeneous that when you do get wet, when it rains again, it crumbles into just compacted. It's like a brick. So you don't work wet soil. And this is a little bit wet here actually. So I had these young high school guys today kind of yanking it out and trying to get them not to walk on it. However, if this does happen, you don't rototill it, but what I do on this scale is I chisel plow it. The chisel plow looks like a fish hook, and it doesn't turn the soil. It doesn't flip it over like traditional moldboard plowing does. It just stirs it. It goes down maybe as deep as you want it to go, depending on your tractor speed and the depth that you set the plow and all that stuff. But it just stirs the soil, mixes it like that, without flipping it. Because what you're doing when you flip it is you're bringing subsoil up to the surface. And most of your plants depend upon the first 2 inches in order to get their nutrition from, right? So here you see, okay, you're in the fall time now. Your garden's pretty much finished, right? And this is an assembly of various tools that you can use. I mean, to flip the soil. You want to leave it looking about like that.
So big tool.
6:45 p.m.
Why? Why would you leave it like that? Anybody know? It's because you see how it's getting air all around it? So in the springtime, that can dry out. And it can especially dry out and be fertilized at the same time when after doing this, you do this to it. You add some manure or whatever you have, whatever organic matter you have to add to it. So you're flipping it. You can use a mattock if you don't have anything else. That's real slow. But if you got a small backyard garden, it's not a big deal, right? It's called a mattock. Or traditionally you can use a shovel, which is also very slow work. Just kind of flip it over. Don't break it up too much, but like that. This is kind of more traditional in Asia. I forget, they have all different names for it, but basically it's just a kind of a flipping tool that it's really okay. This is kale that was planted 2 weeks ago, and it's about this high. And look what it's done in 2 weeks. This kale will be good until July or August next year. Now it's not mulch like we saw that other bed, that kind of permanent mulch, heavy mulch bed. But what we did last winter, and it worked like a charm. And there was a 3-week period last February where it was really cold, super cold and snowy, right? So what we did is we put these hoops, which are I think 70 cents a piece. It's 9-gauge wire, pre-bent already, I have one. Oh, there's one right there. You can see it. Stretch it out at 72 inches. So it fits over a 4-foot bed like this. And this plastic is the same plastic that you see not on this high tunnel where it's frosted, but on the big high tunnel over there. That's kind of traditional 6 mil greenhouse grade, ultraviolet light, UV resistant plastic. This stuff will last for years. I mean, it's good for probably 4 or 5 years easily. I use it to cover wood piles and tractors and all kinds of stuff, right? So a bed like this, these are 250-foot beds. Last year we had probably 100 foot of this 3 times covered with hoops and 6 mil plastic, and we were growing collard greens, chard, patsoi, lettuce, like that, and they did fine. They did excellent. The problem with it is when you get a good heavy snow, it tends to weigh down this. You can kind of just shake it off, but it's a lot of work. There's a lot of maintenance involved. You got to take the sandbags off and straighten it out again and all that stuff. But it's kind of a toss-up, you know. Would you rather do that or drive to Jebia's and buy toxic vegetables grown in the Central Valley of California, which, by the way, is running out of water? So anyway, this 6 mil plastic is excellent for this kind of thing with these hoops. So that's great season extension. These are sandbags. Sand is really super cheap, and they hold it down. But the kind of problems you run into with this is that water will hit here, or snow will hit here. They'll cascade down, and you get caught up in here. So periodically, you got to take all the sandbags off and kind of drain it, and then tighten it up again and put sandbags on. But if you're really intent on growing your own food, even in the wintertime, and you don't have a high tunnel, here it is. This is one way to do it. Okay, let's walk down this way, please. Okay, this is bok choy. Further down is patsoi, and that's all mustard greens down there, and then kale, last year's kale, way down there, way at the end. All right, so this is kind of a go-between between nothing and the 6 mil greenhouse grade plastic. This is called floating row cover. Floating row cover was designed originally for insect protection. But it also works for frost protection as well. You're adding, with that stuff, you're adding 7 or 8 degrees additional heat protection. This you're adding probably 3 or 4. And it's easier to work with. You got to be a little careful with it because it's almost like tissue paper. So you have to exercise some caution with it. But in the summer, if you get like a really hot spell in the summertime, I use this stuff for shade cloth in a way. For example, I'll take a clothespin and I'll just move the clothespin up like this if the sun's over there or coming up over there. And it shades it a little bit, but it allows enough air and light through to make it grow just as effectively as if there's nothing. So that's another material and method, using the hoop method like that. There, what I didn't bring out here, I should have, are square hoops. And they've got a little eyelet on each side, so you can actually run twine or something down it like that. It helps support the shape of the hoop or whatever material. Okay, questions? Anybody have any? So that concludes our season extension workshop, your really early garden. Hope that was helpful to you. Thank you for your kind attention.
Very.
Thank you, Take care.
Yeah.